Hello, I'm Jesse Waters, along with Martha McCallum, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Fox News alert. A lot of breaking news to tell you about. Attorney General Jeff Sessions resigning at President Trump's request. The president already naming Sessions' chief of staff, Matthew Whitaker, as acting attorney general. Sources telling Fox News that Whitaker is now in charge of everything at the DOJ, including the Russia investigation. This resignation follows President Trump's news conference today, where he was repeatedly asked about Sessions and the Mueller investigation.
Can you give us clarity, sir, on your thinking currently, now after the midterms, about your Attorney General and your Deputy Attorney General? Do they have long-term job security?
I'd rather answer that at a little bit different time. We're looking at a lot of different things, including cabinet. I'm very happy with most of my cabinet.
You consider removing Mr. Mueller from his position?
I could have ended it any time I wanted. I didn't. And there was no collusion.
We'll have our reaction to this breaking news and to the president's epic clash with the media later in the show. But first to our top story, the historic midterm elections. Democrats retaking the House, but Republicans making key gains in the Senate. President Trump calling the outcome a major success.
Carlos Cubella, Mike Kaufman. Too bad, Mike. Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia. And Barbara Comstock was another one. I mean, I think she could have won that race, but she didn't want to have any embrace. Those are some of the people that, decided for their own reason not to embrace.
All right, the president also slamming Republicans, which you just saw, who lost for not backing his agenda fully.
I thought it was a very close to complete victory. I won Georgia. President Obama campaigned very hard in Georgia. Oprah Winfrey campaigned very, very hard all over the television. I said, this is going to be tough. I only had me. And then we went to Florida, and they had celebrities all over the place. And a man who happens to be a very smart person was running, Ron DeSantis, and people didn't give him a chance. And I went, and we did some great work.
You liked how I set those sound bites up, didn't you?
Yeah, that was excellent.
Okay.
Keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah,
That's right, just to make sure they're watching. I do want to make sure everybody knows I basically nailed my prediction the night before. I said the House, the Democrats were going to pick up 20 to 28 seats. Right now they're at 26. I said in the Senate they're going to gain 4. They've gained 3, so I'm basically a genius. Going to you, though, Greg.
Yes.
A lot of big wins for Republicans in the Senate and key governor races, but they did lose the House.
I don't think you could get a better outcome than this for President Trump.
Success.
Yeah. No, I want to say I'm kidding. But today is about teaching liberals a lesson about losing. Nobody this morning was out setting fire to a car because they lost the House. Nobody was hitting someone in a resistance shirt in the face because they lost the House. I went to the gym. That's what conservatives do. They just get on with their life.
You look buff today.
Thank you very much. And I'm really happy for the Democrats. And I think because I think it's important to share power. And I don't think they may not feel that way, but I think it is good for them to have a voice in government. And granted, it's the House. I mean, who cares? But I think it's good news. And also the people that won aren't crazy progressives. In the suburbs, a lot of them are veterans, and the ones that lost, a lot of them like Beto and a few other people were progressive, so that's good. So the good news is that the Dems get the House, so the kids get to play with the toys. The Republicans get the Senate, so the adults handle the heavy machinery, and it creates a whole new storyline for us in the media. It's like your favorite sitcom getting a new neighbor. Right? It's like, yeah. It's like, so now you have a whole new thing. The nemesis. It's like the $6 Million Man when they brought in the Bionic Woman. It's great. We have so much more information. Martha, you're staring at me like I'm crazy.
Hey, wait a minute. This is my job. I'm enjoying the show like I always do. Am I actually on the show? Yeah. I didn't realize that. I was just sort of watching from my
We
know that you watch.
All right. Yeah, Martha, you basically took us down to the wire last night, very late. You saw it and right out of the gate and to the very end, and you don't seem tired at all. But what's your takeaway from last night?
You know, I think that what we ended up with is a map that looks like America. America's very divided. You now have a House that is dominated by the Democrats, and that's going to change things dramatically. They're already sort of chomping at the bit to get their hands on a number of these committee leaderships, which is going to, I think, one of the things that I think is very interesting this morning is that, the day after the election, it was sort of that feeling, and I'm talking about the presidential election, that, you sort of have that feeling, well, oh, wow, this is an incredible outcome. President Trump won. So I guess this is the new reality, and everyone's just going to sort of maybe accept this, and the country moves on, and you see where it goes next. But no, it was like, bam, right out of the gate. And I felt that way this morning as well, watching the president's news conference this afternoon. You sort of felt after last night, okay, so maybe things settle in a little bit. You've got, divided government, which is a very American reality situation. And right out of the gate, we have an incredibly contentious, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but incredibly contentious news conference and a very clear new reality in America.
Well, looking at Juan's face, he doesn't seem as happy as I thought he would be, considering, it was not the blue wave that a lot of people predicted, Juan, and there were some, worrying signs for the Trump campaign about, going forward in 2020, but you don't seem that excited about retaking the House.
Well, to me, I love the idea, as Martha was suggesting, there's a check that the Congress, the House, is now a check on the president.
Right.
And I think that's what the founding fathers intended with our form of government. I embrace that. I think it's terrific. But with regard to the blue wave, I feel more like I got purple rain.
Very good song.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you. Yeah, because I was so disappointed by what happened with the governor and the Democratic governor, who would have been the first black governor of Florida, or Stacey Abrams, who's still in a contest in Florida. I think lots of Democrats were heavily emotionally as well as financially invested in Beto O'Rourke in Texas. It came close. So to me, it was terrific in terms of looking at the House races. And as I say, the big news is that Democrats now control the House. So when Greg says that's really good news, I was so pleased to hear my friend say that. But I think that it's big news in part because it's changed the political landscape. That where you had one-party rule in our country for the last 2 years, you now have Democrats in position not only to act as a check, but to participate in terms of the legislative process, ideas and policies, in ways that we have grown unaccustomed to. But I just come back to the idea that when we have such a divided country, it's dangerous. I think there are a lot of feelings, and I'm just disappointed, and I would have liked a stronger sort of signal to President Trump that people don't like the divisive rhetoric and the anger and the kind of things he does. And you look at it, and the results are that women, especially white women in the suburbs, went for the Democrats. The independents went for the Democrats. Well, in rural America, President Trump had a very successful political strategy, which is, I don't care about the suburbs. I only care about my base, and I'm going out and I'm going to talk to the biggest red base and give them culture wars and migrant invasions, and they bought it. That's a shock to me.
Well, the president, Dana, does have a lot of work to do in the Rust Belt, in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan. There's some warning signs there, and in the suburbs, and obviously health care played a major role in the Democrats' victory. How do you see it?
I think all of that is true. I was really interested in the deepening divide, not just partisan-wise, but geographically. So rural America versus urban America. And if you look at the big map, right, there's red all the way across in all the rural areas. The Republicans are so strong there. But in the cities, those big major population centers, including in Texas, you have Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, and those are growing cities that Republicans are going to have to keep in. I'm thinking 20 years ahead down the road. You got to think about that. Republicans usually had won the suburbs for a couple decades, and to cede that ground to Democrats is
what do you think that
dangerous.
Signals policy-wise, or is it more about the president's style?
Well, I don't know yet. I think that we'll have to see how things shake out. Certainly healthcare is a thing, but in our voter analysis, it showed 50% of people want to go sort of the progressive way and 50% of the people like the conservative way. So how do you get those minds to come together? But everyone thinks it's the number one issue.
That's the great, you know what? Maybe divided government reduces the divisiveness in a country because, you know, as my libertarian streak likes the fact that it's self-canceling. So, and that that's good, as opposed to.
But one of the problems, I'm sorry, one of the problems about divided government in this environment is that it doesn't work. You know, what we see is you get gridlock, right? So the ideal situation is where you've got Republicans and Democrats, but they find things that they agree on and move forward on.
I don't want them to move forward. That's the thing. As a libertarian, I want it to be stuck in the mud.
You're pro-gridlock.
I'm pro-gridlock.
Okay.
But I just think it's unbelievable. Like, men still voted strongly for Trump and Republicans.
I can't believe women vote for Democrats.
Women voted by 20 points for the Democrats.
I love how
so
I
it's
love
like
how
a
the
marriage, and the marriage isn't working great. They're at each other like
maybe
that.
Hillary
That's
was wrong.
love.
Maybe the men can't tell the women that they're married to.
Yes.
Is that right,
Maybe
darling?
she got that wrong.
Oh, darling.
Juan's going to listen to Purple Rain in the break, but when we come back, breaking news out of Washington, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has resigned. The Five's reaction next. Plus, President Trump's epic clash with the media early today.
Dana.
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I
That's
was going
enough.
to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
All
President.
that's coming up on the Five.
So we're following the breaking news out of Washington today. Just moments ago, Attorney General Jeff Sessions resigning at the request of President Trump. Rocky relationship this has been, and it's really been documented in the media since Sessions recused himself from the Mueller investigation. The president announcing that Matthew Whitaker, who currently serves as chief of staff to Sessions, will become the acting attorney general. In a tweet earlier, President Trump, you could call him President Tweet.
I like that.
I'm all with you.
Trump saying, quote,
too.
"We thank Attorney General Jeff Sessions for his service and we wish him well, exclamation point. A permanent replacement will be nominated at a later date." So, Dana, I heard you earlier today saying that it sort of reminded you of your days in the Bush White House and the felling of the Rumsfeld tree.
Yeah, so leading into the midterms in 2006, people go back in time. The Iraq War in 2006, we've suffered many casualties, many more Iraqi casualties. The American public was getting frustrated. The war was considered not to be going in a good direction. It was right after that the surge was created. But what happened was everyone was mad at Secretary Rumsfeld. Not necessarily President Bush, but he knew that the frustration was really pent up, especially on Capitol Hill. So you lose, you should make a change, right? You should do something to show that you got it, you heard it, and you're moving on to try to fix something. So it was like I believe it was the very next day after the midterm, President Bush did let Rumsfeld go, said goodbye to him, and that's when Secretary Gates came on board. It was interesting just thinking back on that. So many people in the Senate and Leg Affairs were so upset and said, if you had fired Rumsfeld before the midterm, then we wouldn't have lost all of these seats. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think it was maybe just sort of baked in the cake. But yes, this did feel like that. The president, from a communication standpoint, I think very smart not to reveal that he was going to fire Jeff Sessions after the press conference that he did for 87 minutes. But he gave a couple of tells. One of the things I think to watch for is throughout the press conference, the president said over and over again, the Mueller investigation is costing the American people entirely too much money. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. Matt Whitaker is on record saying that it is within the power of the Attorney General's office to whittle down the budget of the special counsel. And so I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's a tell to me.
There's been some speculation that he might suggest defunding the investigation overall. He has also indicated that he felt that the investigation has run amok of its purview in terms of investigating the actual Russia attempts to potentially affect the election, and that it's sort of bled into family finances for the Trumps and all of that. Question, Jesse, in terms of Rod Rosenstein, because a lot of people, he's the deputy attorney general. He was not moved up. Matt Whitaker was pulled in, which is an odd succession for Sessions.
Right. So they sidelined Rod and put Whitaker at the top. So when the Mueller report comes in, it goes to Whitaker. It doesn't go to Rod. And, whoever gets this report, they can disclose whatever they want. They could keep it close to the vest. They could disclose everything. It's really up to Whitaker to do what he sees fit with this report from Robert Mueller. I was talking to your cohort, Steyerwalt, and he was briefing me on the politics of this. And you know what? He's a lot smarter than you give him credit for. I think I might actually do a podcast with him and steal him away, because this is what he said. He said this is all about leverage with the negotiations about the interview that the president's supposed to give to Mueller. Right now, they've been jockeying for position. Is it going to be oral? Is it going to be written? And they put it off until after the midterms. And right down now, you're basically at the finish line. And is the president going to sit down and answer questions, or is it all going to be written? And what this does by appointing Whitaker to oversee this thing, it gives leverage to the president. It signals to Robert Mueller that I'm in charge, I have more control than you do, and let's wrap this thing up based off of what Whitaker has said in writing. And in the past, people call him a political operative. I understand why, but this is right now, I think the next 2 months is, we're going to see the end of this Mueller investigation.
One of the things that surprised me was how surprised everyone was. Because there's been talk about this for months and months and months, and even suggestion that it was going to happen after the midterms. And suddenly there's all this shock and outrage, Greg, that, everybody can't believe that the president did something that he's been talking about and has the right to do for some time.
This is not a big story. It is not a big story. It's a yawn of the day, Dana. He made it 2 years. In Trump years, that's actually 8 years. And the real casualty here is Jim Acosta, because he had that 50 seconds of heroic outrage fame, and it's kind of been quickly forgotten, although we'll bring it back in the next block. But the winner here, pot smokers. Right now, I mean, you're watching marijuana stocks go up since this decision, because we all kind of implicitly knew that Sessions was going to be a barrier to decriminalization and whatnot. So I think this is going to make that much easier. I love that the firing letter, was probably dated and signed ages ago, right? I mean, it wasn't dated. It was signed ages ago and written. I think Trump does this with his marriages, too. I'm not sure. But they're like prenups. He has them ready, pulls them out, there you go.
Today's the day.
Yeah.
Up the date.
Juan, some folks look at this and say President Trump, he and Jeff Sessions had a great relationship early on. He was one of the first people to come on board the Trump campaign, but it soured quickly when he recused himself from the Russia administration. And some people feel like, President Obama had Eric Holder. They were symbiotic. They were on the same page in a lot of ways, and that a president deserves to have someone who he doesn't feel is an adversary in a difficult environment for him leading the Justice Department.
I don't think Jeff Sessions was ever an adversary to Donald Trump. I think the question was whether or not he should have recused himself, and the president's of the opinion that he should not have recused himself. And what you heard from Jeff Sessions is that he felt he had no choice, because he not only had been in the campaign, remember he was being questioned, Martha, about contacts with Russian officials. So, but what strikes me here is that Whitaker is almost like a mark. Whitaker has written articles saying he would have indicted Hillary Clinton, and that he does not think that the president's finances, should be investigated by Robert Mueller.
Sounds like a smart guy.
No, but
it sounds like the kind of attorney general President Trump would want.
Exactly. No, but that's the thing, Dana. I think it's now highly politicized. So in fact, the president tweeted today that most Americans, and it's overwhelmingly Republicans, don't think that this investigation should continue.
But
that
that's
it should
true.
stop.
I mean, there's a CNN poll basically that says that most people think that there are issues with the investigation.
Yeah, but the point I was making to you is that the poll is based on a disproportionate number of Republicans, Trump supporters saying this, not independents, not Democrats. And I think the president has now made the case that this is all politics. This has nothing to do with any real investigation. They're just going after me, and you, my supporters, ignore it.
Well, at least the pot smokers can be happy.
Yeah, let's get out of this segment. I'm falling asleep.
All right, it's game on. President Trump ready to brawl as Democrats are already threatening several investigations.
Now that the Democrats have taken the House, they're already threatening to launch investigations against President Trump and his administration. The president says he welcomes the challenge.
Almost from the time I announced I was going to run, they've been giving us this investigation fatigue. It's been a long time. They got nothing, zero. They can look at us, and then we can look at them, and it'll go back and forth, and it'll probably be very good for me politically. I could see it being extremely good politically, because I think I'm better at that game than they are.
So, Jesse, in 2006, when the Republicans lost the majorities, we immediately had all these investigations. One of them was a stupid U.S. attorney scandal. And I tried to answer every question appropriately, and I wish I would have had a little bit more of that, like, yeah, bring it on, we don't care.
Yeah, you need a little more Trump bring it on in your life.
Yeah, I needed that.
Yeah, that's definitely you, Dana. Listen, Pelosi can launch investigations all day, and McConnell can just sit around and confirm judges. If they want to play that game, they can play that game. And Trump said it. He goes, we can either negotiate, and if not, we'll go on a war footing, because it means war. And Pelosi was a mess last night when she, was celebrating. She didn't look good. She was reading off a teleprompter. At one point, she goes, let's give a hand to everybody with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah,
I mean, like, what was that? I mean, she sounded like you're just not ready to have won the House, but she gained her composure today, and I thought she said some good things about unity, and I think there's potential to do deals on health care and infrastructure.
You can segue to a call for like no one I've ever seen. Can we play the Pelosi bipartisanship sought, please?
This is going to be a big problem for President Trump going forward. If he thinks that the media is annoying, wait till he meets a Democratic House that has subpoena power and actually has the legal ability to force them to turn over documents. We're going to look like nothing compared to that. I mean, he is going to find an opposition that he has never really encountered before.
Wow, Dana, Pelosi got a lot of work done.
How about I just read to you what Pelosi said? She said she had a conversation with the president, Martha, about how we could work together. Over the years, we've been able to work together regionally, bipartisan, across the aisle, across the Capitol, and down Pennsylvania Avenue. I hope that we can do that. Is this going to last beyond this week?
Well, they both sort of threatened each other with the same thing. She said the other day, well, we do have subpoena power, and when we need to use it, we'll use it judiciously, but we certainly will use it. And if we don't need to use it, then of course we're open to negotiations. And the president said the same thing. I'm happy to deal with you. Let's talk about infrastructure. He said Nancy and I could get along well, he believes. And you know what? It's possible that they could, but he said if you hold this kind of axe over my head with more investigations, it's not going to be on the table. So I think they're both sort of in their corner, and it's going to take a question about who the bigger person is who can actually come forward and say, let's try to work on something. And I think it's all about 2020 as well, in terms of figuring out, do you want to have something that you can say, this is what we accomplished and we were able to cross the aisle? I don't know. I mean, I don't think it looks very optimistic at this point, but we'll see.
Jerry Nadler, who is likely to be the Democrat that takes over the Judiciary Committee, he was all up in arms with the yawn of the day, the Sessions story, and he said we're going to have to maybe investigate.
Yeah, of course. And I was watching another network, and they were like laying out all the investigations. They were so excited. They even mentioned Puerto Rico to investigate what happened down there. So they're like lining them all up. Look, there's one thing I've learned about Donald Trump for 2 years: reciprocity. It's like if you do right by him, he will do right by you. And for example, I mean, he's a salesman. So he's always willing to, like he talked to Kim Jong-un. So he can talk to anybody. So there is hope there that they can negotiate with him. However, if you do something bad, then it's mutually assured destruction. If you have a pie and he has a pie and you throw that pie, he's going to throw the pie. Far better to share the pie, right? Share the pie with the American voter and negotiate instead of investigate.
You see, a lot of what
I love that word.
Yes,
a lot of what the president was able to accomplish the past few years has been by executive action because of the margins in the Congress. So now he actually can talk about gridlock in Congress. It's not his fault. It's because of the Democrats. So he has someone to fight against, Juan.
Yeah, but your premise is that he would have to say it's somehow different than what was happening before. And of course, it's not going to be different if there's gridlock. So what was interesting to me was I thought it was so Machiavellian today. Did you see this tweet, Dana, where he tweets out that, in fact, Nancy Pelosi deserves to be Speaker of the House? Now, this is the same woman that he has been demonizing and belittling as the face of the Democrats.
He's being conciliatory.
But not only conciliatory, you know what he said, Greg? He would get her Republican votes.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
I know.
How do you make sense of this guy?
You should thank him.
Well, I should thank him for giving me a lesson in Machiavellian politics.
Why don't you take him at his word?
Because I don't believe him. So I think either it's the case, as you guys were saying, it's about 2020, and he loves having her as a foil.
Right.
Because he says to his backers, I mean, even yesterday when we were here on the set and Pelosi's picture came up on the wall, you could hear people outside in Fox Square, boo.
And that was her family.
Was that right? I didn't know they were invited. So what you get is a situation where Pelosi, I think, is now in a trap, because guess what? Democrats don't want her to play with Donald Trump.
Well, not only that, but Jesse, a lot of these new members of Congress from the Democratic side, they have already pledged that they would not vote for Nancy Pelosi. It was one of the ways that they figured out how to win. And now President Trump is setting her up to ask these new members of Congress for their very first vote, to vote for her to be Speaker of the House.
Yeah, obviously it was good the Republicans lost the House. We have them right where we want them. And just to your point, Greg, about I think the Democrats are going to follow the media over a cliff on these investigations. They're going to get egged on, and they're going to fall into the exact same trap, which cost them the House the last time when they went far to the left. And then what happened a couple years later? Republicans won like 60-something seats in 2010, and Pelosi doesn't want to go out like that. This is the end of her road for her. She wants a legacy. She really wants it on health care. And I think the president and Nancy can get together on health care and do something which is going to be good for the American people.
Okay, are you making that prediction?
Take it to the bank. Just like last night I predicted. Okay. I'm making it here.
I'm gonna, let's bookmark this one. All right, sparks fly at President Trump's news conference, the fireworks at the White House.
So here's Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, or I should say now the former Attorney General, leaving the Justice Department. As you can see, there's a group of people congratulating him, giving him well wishes as he departs. This is 2 years that he's been there, come this January, and Jeff Sessions, as you can see, being applauded at the moment. This is right outside the Justice Department on Constitution. That's his new, the new Attorney General, Mr. Whitaker, shaking hands with him. It looks like he's about to get emotional there, and you can understand why. It's been a rough road, and that letter, as Jesse pointed out, was unsigned that he had given to the president. The president releasing the letter today, and Jeff Sessions leaving tonight. So this was all done in rapid fashion. Sessions getting into a car there right outside the Justice Department, surrounded by senior staff. Back to the 5. President Trump's first news conference after the midterms turned out to be must-see TV. The event featuring some very wild moments, including clashes with the media. There were also some classic Trump lines. Watch this.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President.
Come on. Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN. All right. And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question. Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President.
That's enough. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN.
Why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
Peter, what are you trying to be him? Why do I like Oprah? What kind of a question is that?
Yeah, I'm just asking. Just curious. But the real question.
He's a comedian here. Let me tell you, it's a racist question. It's such a hostile media. It's so sad. You know what? When you get bored, would you please tell me? Seriously.
Wow. I don't know where to start, so I go to a former White House press secretary.
Okay, well.
Hey, wait a second.
Jim Acosta was not at the White House briefing room when I was there. In fact, there weren't too many characters. Helen Thomas comes to mind. Sometimes she was a bit of a character and liked to get a little tension going, but this is a little bit different because it's just different. Like, the president handles it differently. He likes to push back against the media. Republicans have complained about the media for a long time. Like, conservatives have always felt that the media is unfair to them. Sort of call it out in, you know, your blogs and weekly magazines that you get, but this is on a whole different scale. Some of the polling from last night about the dismal state of affairs for how people believe the president or don't believe the president, believe the media, don't believe the media, that's also part of this polarization that's happening. I did I felt bad for the young woman there she works for the president. He's telling her to move the microphone around because that's what her job is, and then Acosta was holding on to it, and she got caught up in that crossfire. She did as best she could in that situation.
Jesse, I put this question to you as someone who likes Donald Trump, I think, and
no,
I'm just shocked.
I think I cover him pretty fairly well.
I've never seen. I can't believe. You know, I've been a White House reporter. I've asked questions. My job is to hold powerful people accountable, to ask difficult questions, to try to break news. He seems to me to have had a tantrum. He just got.
Are you talking about Acosta? Or
no,
yeah, I agree, Acosta.
Listen, Juan, you know how these things go. They've been doing this for 3 generations. Reporters in the TV age, they stand up. The president gets to pick who he wants to ask. Yeah. The president gets to answer however he wants, and then the president gets to move on and pick the next question. Yeah. Never have I ever seen before, and no one else has either, someone refusing to let the president move on, refusing to hand over the microphone, to the point where he's actually instigating a physical confrontation with a young female White House staffer who's just trying to move the press conference along. He's arguing with the president. He's hostile to the president. And this is not a question about a Watergate-era scandal, the future of the republic, war and peace. This is just about how he's characterizing the caravan.
Right,
it's a difference of opinion.
He doesn't get to choose the question, Jesse. But
okay, then he can choose the reporter, and choose which next reporter to call.
Fine, but when Peter Alexander stood up, he said, I don't think you're the best either. I mean, it was unbelievable to me.
Okay, so that he was just sharing his opinion about another reporter.
All right, well, I don't get it. So, Martha, the other part was the president said last night this was close to a complete and total victory in terms of the midterms.
Yeah, I really think the president walked into that room today feeling good. He was, he's thinking, I thought I was going to get shellacked, which was President Obama's word after he lost 63 seats. I think the president thought, let's go out there and do a news conference today because I'm feeling good. We picked up some significant seats in the Senate. We didn't do as poorly in the House as he thought, picked up some very significant governorships, and he walked in there and he didn't realize that a lot of the folks in the room had something totally different for breakfast. Yeah. They were feeling, I think, in some individual cases, emboldened in their rudeness, and that now they could basically knock them around even harder than they usually do because they're empowered, I guess. The press should not be aligned with political parties. Right. However, it felt like that. It felt like they were emboldened by last night's election, and they wanted to try to push back. I mean, there were moments in there today that I actually thought that a brawl might break out. Oh my gosh. I mean, it felt like it was about to go off the rails.
Yeah, the president was like walking back from the podium, catching some breaths.
No, that is unbelievable.
I've never seen
what we saw in there today.
So, Greg, the part that I thought was unbelievable was when you pushed the playback machine earlier and ran a tape of President Trump putting down Republicans who lost yesterday.
Yeah. I did enjoy that, especially when he said, Maya love showed him no love. But I do want to talk about Acosta because I saw the pregame. I was before Trump was up there, I had it on another station, and the media was sharpening.
You ever watch Fox?
I'm at the gym. They don't show Fox. They were sharpening their knives. CNN was going through the list of possible investigations, like I said before. Acosta was talking about the immigration ad and that stuff. And then Acosta and Gloria Borger, I think her name, were both wondering if Trump would use the word shellacking because it was a shellacking. It wasn't a shellacking, you bozos. It wasn't even a blue wave. So I think that Jim Acosta actually embarrassed all of those people in there with his behavior, because in the nutshell, what he said was, President Trump, will you agree with me that would you agree with me that you're a racist? That was what he was saying, and that's what CNN wanted him to say. They cannot move from their bitter, emotional position. The president came out there sounding positive and conciliatory. It didn't matter. It just proves that CNN can't have nice things. You give them something they can't do, they don't know what to do. They just throw a tantrum. Trump, I thought, handled it pretty well.
It was calm. Calmish. I wanted to say something else that's going to happen to this White House press corps, and they might not realize it. When the balance of power switches, the attention from the media switches too. Now, the people that will be driving the media coverage, for the most part, are Hill reporters. They're not at the White House. Of course, the president can still break news, but all of those editing decision things are happening up on the Hill. Now, the Democrats are driving the news, and at the White House, if you're on, might not be a problem for this White House, but I saw it happen in 2006 and 2007 when all of a sudden the White House reporters didn't matter as much. And there's another reason. A lot of reporters, and maybe Acosta will be one of them, will head out pretty soon for the presidential campaign trail.
Right. So, but it looked to me like a verbal brawl, and it just was so disappointing to me. I just think, I don't understand why the president's calling reporters racist, telling them to shut up and sit down. I just think
I like the fact that we're seeing the real thing.
That wasn't a racist question.
He didn't call them racist. He said it was a racist question.
I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on in America.
She said, why are you? She said, you use that word, which basically everyone understands as a dog whistle for white supremacy. And he said, I'm offended by that question.
Well, he can say that, Martha, but he said he thought it was a racist question, and I don't get it. Anyway,
it was great. He put it back. He put it back on the people who accuse you of racism.
Oh, this is crazy. The clash over Trump's Supreme Court pick backfired.